My daughter-in-law slid a folder across my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after we buried my son. She was wearing black, still we all were, but her nails were freshly done. Pale pink. I remember noticing that and thinking it was strange, the things grief makes you aware of. There are some things we need to go over, she said. Well, everything is still fresh. I wrapped both hands around my coffee mug and looked at her. Serena had been married to my son Gerald for 11 years. I had watched her walk down the aisle at First Baptist in Savannah. I had held her hand in the delivery room when my granddaughter came into the world 6 weeks early, and we were all terrified. I thought I knew her. What kind of things? I asked. She opened the folder. The restaurant, the property on Whitmore Street, and the house. I set my mug down slowly. Calloway's kitchen had been open for 31 years. Gerald's father, my late husband Edmond, started it in 1993 with $12,000 he had saved working double shifts at the paper mill and a peach cobbler recipe his grandmother had written on the back of a church bulletin. We built that place from 4 tables and a second-hand griddle into the kind of Savannah institution that gets written up in Southern living. Gerald grew up bussing tables. He ran it for the last 8 years, and when he had his heart attack at 52 and was gone in 40 minutes, the paramedic told me, and I still cannot hold that number in my mind without something breaking. I assumed we would figure out what came next together. As a family, Serena had apparently already figured it out. Gerald named me executor, she said. Her voice was careful, practiced, I thought later. And with the estate the way it is, I think the cleanest path forward is to sell the restaurant and the Whitmore property together. A developer has already expressed interest. They want to put up condominiums. I looked at her. There's a buyer? I said. Yes, it's a group out of Atlanta. Meridian Properties. She slid a single sheet toward me. The offer is fair, enough to pay off the business debts and give you and me each a clean settlement. I turned the paper over in my hands. The number at the bottom had a comma in the right place, but it was not a number that reflected 31 years of my life. It was not a number that reflected the summers I spent canning tomatoes in the back kitchen to keep food costs down. It was not a number that reflected the morning I learned Edmond had cancer, and I went in at 5 a.m. anyway because we had a church group of 40 coming for breakfast, and I was not going to let those people down. And the house? I said. The house is part of the estate. Gerald's name is on the deed. That was true. Gerald's name was on the deed. That was true. His father had added it years ago when Gerald took over the restaurant, for tax reasons our accountant had recommended at the time. Edmond's name had been taken off after he passed. Mine had never been on it to begin with, something that had never once felt significant until that Tuesday morning. I want you to know, Serena said, that I'm not trying to make this difficult. I know this is a hard time, but Gerald would have wanted things settled cleanly. He hated loose ends. He did. That part was true. My son was organized, methodical. He kept spreadsheets for his grocery lists. But he also called me every Sunday evening without fail and always opened with the same question. You doing okay, Mama? And I do not believe for 1 second that the man who asked me that every single week of his adult life intended for his wife to sit across from me with the developer's offer 3 days after his funeral. I thanked her for coming. I said I needed time to think. She said, of course, and smiled the way people smile when they believe they have already won. After she left, I sat in my kitchen for a long time. Then I called Hazel. Hazel Drummond has been my attorney for 19 years. She is 71 years old, keeps her silver hair in a bun so tight it looks painful, and has never in my presence said a single unnecessary word. She is the kind of woman who makes other attorneys nervous in depositions. I have seen it happen. I told her everything Serena had said. I read her the number off the offer sheet. There was a pause. Irene, Hazel said. Do you know who Meridian Properties is? A developer out of Atlanta, Serena said. Another pause. And did she happen to mention that Meridian Properties was founded 8 months ago by a man named Daniel Chu, who, if I am remembering correctly, is the brother of Serena's college roommate? I did not say anything for a moment. No, I said. She did not mention that. I thought not. Stay put. I'm coming over. Hazel arrived in 40 minutes with a leather briefcase and a look on her face that I had learned over 19 years meant someone was about to have a very bad day, and it was not going to be me. She spread papers on my kitchen table. Documents Edmond had filed, a trust agreement he had established in 2019, 2 years before his own death, which I had signed and then largely forgotten because Edmond handled the finances and I trusted him completely and probably should have paid closer attention. Read this paragraph, Hazel said, pointing. I read it, then I read it again. The Calloway Family Irrevocable Trust, established in the name of Irene May Calloway, beneficiary and primary trustee, held the controlling interest in Calloway's Kitchen LLC, the commercial property at 1140 Whitmore Street, and the family residence at 412 Peregrine Drive, Savannah, Georgia. Edmond had done it quietly. He had watched Gerald take over the restaurant and he had loved his son, but he had also known Gerald the way a father knows a son, every strength, every blind spot, and one of Gerald's blind spots had always been that he trusted people too readily. He trusted his charm to smooth things over. He trusted that everyone around him wanted what he wanted. Edmond had mentioned this to me once, obliquely, the way he mentioned things he was worried about. He had said, I just want to make sure you're protected, May, whatever happens. I had thought he meant from the world in general. He had meant something more specific. The property on Whitmore Street, the restaurant, the house. All of it held in a trust that Serena had apparently not discovered, or had hoped I didn't know about. She can't sell any of it, Hazel said simply. She has no authority to sell any of it. The executor of Gerald's personal estate has no claim over assets held in an irrevocable trust that predates the marriage. I sat with that for a minute. The buyer she found, I said. Meridian Properties. Founded by her college roommate's brother, Hazel confirmed. I would want to know a great deal more about that arrangement before I let another word of this proceed. I did not call Serena that day, or the next. On the third day, she called me. Her voice had shifted. Something underneath the politeness had tightened. I've been waiting to hear from you, she said. The buyers want an answer by end of week. I'm sure they do, I said. Irene, I know this is emotional, but you have to think practically. The restaurant has debt. The Whitmore property needs a new roof. You can't run Calloway's without Gerald. You don't want to run it. She wasn't entirely wrong about the practical parts. The roof was a problem. The restaurant did carry debt, though less than she seemed to believe. And she was right that I was 67 years old and had no interest in going back to running a kitchen full-time. What she was wrong about was thinking those things gave her the right to decide. I'd like you to come by the house, I said. Saturday morning, and please bring your attorney. A pause. My attorney, if you have one. If not, you're welcome to come alone. She brought someone, a young man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Patrick Ashford and shook my hand with the particular firmness of someone trying to project confidence he doesn't entirely feel. He was maybe 35. He kept glancing at Hazel the way young lawyers glance at older ones when they realize they have miscalculated something. Hazel placed the trust documents on the table. She did not make a speech. She simply explained, calmly and precisely, what Edmond had established, when, and what it meant for every asset Serena had listed in her folder. Serena's face did something complicated. She looked at the documents, then at Patrick, then at me. This can be contested, Patrick said. You're welcome to try, Hazel said. An irrevocable trust established 6 years ago with full legal documentation and the signature of both parties. I'd be curious what grounds you'd cite. He didn't answer that. Serena looked at me. Something had gone out of her expression, the careful, practiced quality, and what was underneath it was harder to look at. Not quite shame, not quite anger, something in between. "I didn't know," she said. And then, quietly, "About the trust." I looked at her for a long moment. She was the mother of my granddaughter. She had loved my son, I believed that, in her way. People contain more than one thing. I have lived long enough to know that. "I believe you," I said, "but I need you to understand what you were prepared to do regardless." She didn't say anything. "You found a buyer connected to someone you know," I said. "You came to me 3 days after Gerald's funeral with an offer that was less than a quarter of what this property is worth. You told me the house was part of the estate without mentioning that you had any questions about what the estate actually contained. You were going to let me believe I had no choice." "Serena." Patrick put a hand on her arm. "Lawyer instinct. Stop talking." She stopped talking. She stopped talking. The weeks that followed were not simple. Nothing involving lawyers and property and grief ever is. Hazel's investigator found that Meridian Properties had offered Serena a finder's fee, a percentage of the acquisition, if she could deliver the Calloway properties under market value. It was not illegal technically. It was the kind of thing that lives in the gray space between opportunism and something worse. Whether she had gone looking for that arrangement or whether it had found her, I never learned for certain. I decided eventually that it didn't matter as much as I had initially thought. What mattered was what came next. I gave Serena what Gerald's estate actually entitled her to, which Hazel calculated precisely, and I paid without argument. I asked for one thing in return. My granddaughter spent Thursday evenings and every other weekend with me. Serena agreed. I think she was relieved to have a clean line. As for the restaurant, I sat with it for 2 months. I walked through Calloway's kitchen on a Wednesday morning when it was closed, the chairs still up on the tables. The smell of decades of good cooking settled into the walls the way smells do in a place that has fed a lot of people over a lot of years. Edmond's photo was still on the wall by the register, the one taken at the grand opening in 1993, where he was 38 years old and grinning like a man who could not believe his luck. I thought about selling it. I thought about it seriously. I am 67, and my knees are not what they were, and I had already given the better part of my life to that kitchen. And then I called Marcus. Marcus Calloway is Gerald's younger brother, my other son, who has spent the last 12 years cooking in restaurants in Charleston and New Orleans, and most recently running the kitchen at a hotel in Atlanta. I had watched him chase this career with a kind of focus that quietly amazed me, the way he could lose himself completely in getting something exactly right. He had not been involved in Calloway's because Gerald was running it, and the two of them together in one kitchen had never been a peaceful arrangement. They loved each other fiercely and argued the same way. With Gerald gone, I called Marcus. I told him everything. I told him about Serena and the folder, and the offer and the trust his father had set up without telling either of them. He was quiet for a long time. "Dad knew," he finally said. "He knew something," I said. "He didn't know what. He just wanted to make sure the door was still mine to open or close." Marcus came home the following month. He walked through Calloway's the same way I had, slowly, quietly, touching things. He stood in front of his father's photo for a long time without saying anything. Then he turned around and said, "Tell me about the roof situation." We reopened Calloway's kitchen 4 months later with a new menu that kept every single one of Edmond's original recipes and added 12 new ones that Marcus had developed over his years away. The peach cobbler stayed exactly as it was because some things you do not touch. On the opening night, I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched the room fill up. People who had been coming since Gerald was in high school, regulars who had driven across town the moment they heard we were back, a few younger faces who had found us through the piece that ran in the Savannah Morning News. A table of church ladies ordered 3 cobblers between 4 of them and then ordered a 4th. My granddaughter was there. Serena brought her and stayed for dinner, and we did not talk about any of it, and that was fine. There are conversations that have been had and do not need to be had again. Later, after the last table cleared and Marcus was in the back with his crew breaking down the kitchen, I sat at the corner table where Edmond used to do the books on Sunday mornings. I had a cup of coffee. The restaurant was quiet in the specific way places are quiet after they have been full of people. Not empty, exactly. Still warm. I thought about what Serena had said that Tuesday morning at my kitchen table. That I couldn't run Calloway's without Gerald. That I wouldn't want to. She was right that I didn't want to run it. But there is a difference between not wanting to run something and not wanting to decide what happens to it. That difference was the whole thing, really. That was what Edmond had understood when he set up that trust and never mentioned it. Not because he didn't trust me to know, but because he knew I might never need to know. He wanted me to have the choice. I have made my choice. The sign out front still says Calloway's Kitchen. It always will. Edmond painted it himself on a Saturday in October 1993, standing on a ladder while I held the bottom rung and told him the letters were crooked, and he said they added character. He was right about that too. The building belongs to me. The recipe belongs to all of us. And nobody, not a developer from Atlanta, not a folder slid across the kitchen table, not anyone gets to decide what we do with either one. That is something I am at peace with. That is something I am at peace with. That is something I imagine Edmond already knew. I have thought a lot about cause and consequence since that Tuesday morning, not in any grand or philosophical way, just the quiet, practical way you think about things when you are 67 and have lived long enough to watch choices ripen into outcomes. Serena did not wake up one morning and decide to be a person who slides a lowball offer across a table 3 days after a funeral. That is not how people become who they are. It happens gradually, in small permissions we give ourselves. A little justification here. A convenient story there. He would have wanted things settled cleanly. Maybe she even believed that. Maybe the line between believing something and needing it to be true had blurred so many times she could no longer find it. That is what I think about when I think about what she did. Not anger anymore, mostly just recognition, because I have made my own small compromises over the years. I have told myself convenient things. The difference is that someone, my husband Edmond, quietly, without fanfare, made sure her convenience had a limit. And that limit was me. Edmond spent his life building things carefully. The restaurant, yes, the property, but also the kind of attention to detail that made him put a lawyer on the phone when something didn't sit right, made him sign documents that protected the people he loved from situations he hoped would never come. He did not do that from fear. He did it from a particular kind of intelligence, the kind that understands that love without structure is just sentiment, and sentiment alone does not hold up in a conference room. I did not always appreciate that about him while he was alive. I thought it was overcaution. I thought he worried too much. I understand now that what he was really doing was trusting me, trusting that if the moment ever came, I would know what to do with what he had left me. That is the thing about preparation. It only looks like distrust from the outside. From the inside, it is the deepest kind of faith. As for me, I will tell you honestly that I almost didn't call Hazel. I sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours after Serena left, and part of me thought, maybe this is just what happens now. Maybe I am too tired to fight. Grief does that. It makes the path of least resistance look reasonable. It makes you want someone else to just handle things so you can sit quietly and miss the person you lost. But there was another part of me, smaller but stubborn, that kept thinking about those church ladies who drove across town every Sunday for Edmond's peach cobbler, about the staff who had worked that kitchen for 20 years, about Marcus, who had spent his whole career learning how to cook, so that one day he might have something worth coming home to. I was not just deciding for myself. I was deciding for all of them. That is what I want to say to anyone listening who has ever been handed a folder and told that the decision has already been made. The decision is never already made. As long as you are the one sitting across that table, you still have a choice. You can accept the number on the paper, or you can pick up the phone. I picked up the phone. Calloway's kitchen is open on Thursday nights now. Marcus makes us shrimp and grits that people have started driving in from 2 counties over to eat. My granddaughter sits at the corner table and does her homework while the dinner rush comes and goes around her. Some things, if you hold on to them, turn into exactly what they were always meant to be.